Just moments ago, the Supreme Court and this landmark rule.
And a federal appeals court Tuesday declined
after
to
a federal judge struck down the city's ban.
Legal advocacy, both on the litigation and the movement side, is a critical tool for social change.
Legal advocacy should not be seen as funding one case for one end result. It's so much broader than that.
If foundations really want to make change at a big level, they have to step into this.
There are times when the only way to make an impact is to go to court.
My name is Darian. I'm 21 years old, and I've been stopped by the police more than 100 times since I was 13. The police officer, he steps out of the car, and he looks at me, he's like, freeze. He immediately kind of runs up on me, grabs me, slams me against the wall. He dumps my book bag on the floor. He empties out all of my possessions. So he kind of just got back in his car and sped off. And I'm just sitting here having to pick up all of my possessions and metaphorically my entire life, my dignity, my humanity up off the floor. When you know you didn't do anything wrong, you're just trying to live a normal life. It takes away all type of human dignity you have, all types of emotional connectivity you have with yourself. It takes a little bit of you away because it's traumatizing.
At the peak of stop and frisk in 2011, there were 700,000 stops and frisks a year, 22,000 a day, overwhelmingly in Black and brown communities in New York.
This was on our front doorstep. We are in New York. It was happening in front of us. I think the funder's role in legal advocacy is to see the connections, to see the space around perhaps the case that can be filled by groups or funding or other levers that we can bring to bear. The legal advocates, the folks who are working in the community, folks who are trying to deal with a policy solution, actually getting them together, I think that was our first contribution.
Floyd versus New York really was born out of community organizing. It was community-based organizations, grassroots organizations of color that said that this was a necessary case. They went to Center for Constitutional Rights and said that it was important to litigate around racial profiling to end stop and frisk abuses in New York City.
The very decision to frame the case as we did, as a racial discrimination case, came from demands of the community because racial discrimination claims are enormously hard to win. Yet, that's exactly how they were experiencing stop and frisk, these community partners. So we felt emboldened and obligated to frame the case as a racial discrimination case.
By the time the trial came around, we'd already had a network of over 60 organizations who knew about the case, and in different neighborhoods, different boroughs, were starting to hold educational events. Litigation can be a really important and powerful tool, but that's what it is. It's a tool. In and of itself, it's not the outcome. And unless it's paired with sustained community organizing, we don't change social conditions.
There was a dramatic win, and what a win means is both symbolic and practical. You have a judicial ruling substantiating in 198 pages a devastating record of police abuse. Shifts power dramatically. It means reform has to happen, and that's the process we're engaged in now.
The lawyers who were bringing the case actually became instrumental on the policy advocacy side. They helped write the legislation. So that bridge and that community that was created allowed all the pieces of the advocacy puzzle to be effective.
Strategic litigation is a multifaceted term, but I think at its core it has a goal of a strategic political or policy outcome beyond merely a victory for the individual client.
Every funder has a goal. Now, they're all different, but if your goal is social change, you cannot ignore the power of changing law.
Jody was diagnosed with MS at 25. She was extremely active. 3 years ago in 2013, Jody was using a walker and a scooter to get around. Then unfortunately suffered a catastrophic MS event. Jody was hospitalized. She was then transferred to a skilled nursing facility where she stayed for approximately 6 weeks. I was informed that Jody was about to be released because she's not showing any more improvement. We were devastated because Jody was not able to bear weight at that point, and the whole goal of her being there was to learn how to bear weight again. Had Jody been given the full opportunity to recover from her MS episode back in 2013, there's a strong chance she would not be in a wheelchair today.
The improvement standard is a phrase that we coined in order to refer to a syndrome in which Medicare coverage is consistently being denied for people who need skilled nursing or therapy because that therapy or nursing was going to maintain their condition, not actually get them better.
It really illustrates a profound ignorance about neurological conditions because people do not improve through rehabilitation therapies the same way that they would if they were recovering from, let's say, a knee replacement surgery. Improving through rehab for a person with MS or perhaps Parkinson's or some other neurological condition is about optimizing the function that they're capable of having to keep them safe, to keep them in their home. It makes a huge difference in the lives of people that need these kinds of therapies.
We were unable to resolve this through the usual channels of negotiating with the government or individual appeals. It just didn't stop it. We decided we needed to go to court to make sure that the law was properly implemented.
I've known the Center for Medicare Advocacy in my career for many years. They're very effective. When they approached me about this issue, I said to them, "You're not going to win on this issue." And they said, "We think we can." But I had enough faith in them that I thought, well, let's give it a try.
We brought the lawsuit Jimmo versus Sebelius on behalf of 5 individuals and 6 organizations, all affected by this improvement standard in various ways. None of them had ever sued the federal government before. This was a very big deal, but I think it helped show the court that it needed to be changed in order to apply the law and get people Medicare coverage.
It was a relatively small grant for Atlantic, but the benefit was enormous. 50,000 people could be helped in a year. Sure enough, they won. There is a point in time where the legislation passes, the courts rule in your favor or against you. It's not over. There's a whole implementation, protection, a lot of things that have to go on to make sure that changes endure and achieve what you want.
We are hoping that there are organizations that will help fund our work and our colleagues' work that will understand that, like us, they have to go the long haul. They have to be there with us. It would be really helpful to have funders stick with the project, understand that continuing work is as important, maybe more important than starting a new project.
There's a lot of tedious work to reform policies, and it's below the radar, it's not in the headlines. And that's actually where funding and resources are probably most important and least accessible, and where we and our partners need the most help from foundations and individual donors.
You can have a funder of any size come to the table. And when I say any size, $20,000, $50,000. By pooling your resource, that's one way in.
There are lots of ways of doing it. There are lots of ways of reducing your risk.
Sometimes it's to build a website, or sometimes it's to make sure that the right person is an expert witness, or get an amicus brief written.
It's a tough world out there, and if you're not willing to get in there and fight, then you're probably not going to be able to really achieve the kind of help that you're trying to provide for vulnerable populations. If you're not willing to do advocacy, you're putting significant constraints around your ability to make change.
My plea to other foundations is don't be afraid. Your success in what you want to achieve will only be augmented if you fund legal advocacy. You will only have bigger and stronger and more lasting success. That's a very strong pathway to get where you need to go.